Welcome back to the KCS Greenville Sub, everybody. It's good to see you all. Hopefully you guys are doing well. Thanks for joining in today. Today we are building east from Hugh Springs, and we're going to go and add some of the details between here and mostly all the way to Jefferson. We're not going to make it all the way to staging, but in our last video I showed how we laid out the track and the table and everything else. Off camera, I did a few more additions that I didn't do on camera. Some of that were the walls that you see here and the backdrop. I also added a few nice posters and things to the walls. If you look carefully for those, you might see them. Definitely going to keep those details on there for operating days. Gives it more of that model railroad feel. So in the town of Avinger, there is a railroad bridge over kind of the main road north and south through town. It is a single track, though. There's not actually a siding right there, but I don't have a lot of space, so I had to put a siding here. So we're going to have a double track bridge, but here I am modeling that. And then there's not too much of a town of Avinger, but what is there wouldn't fit on our little table here. So I'm not actually going to model any part of Avinger, which, to be fair, isn't necessarily a horrible idea if I wanted to be semi-realistic, because there's not really any rail activity in Avinger. Very, very small town. The train just passes through, and that's pretty much it. Although it's not actually much smaller than Hugh Springs. It's just Hugh Springs is where the art is, so there's more activity there. But right now we're mostly just kind of getting these details together for the bridge. I do love to use the BDW bridges for things like deck trusses and through girders and plate girders. And then I love to use the RRTK abutments. Those are absolutely the best in the game, period, in my humble opinion. And then after I finish kind of softening out these grades a little bit near the edge to keep from getting those nasty triangle shadows, I realized that I needed to add the guardrails in the middle. I love to use the R-Trax guardrail. So after I get this road sign up, eventually we'll get to those guardrails. I forgot about this one little road sign that I wanted to add. I spent so much time looking for this thing. But you know what? I wanted to create the implication that there's an intersection beyond the wall. Although I'm never going to model it because it doesn't matter. Not modeling the things that we can't see. But there's a sign, finally. Only took 25 to 30 seconds in the video, which means, 2 minutes in real life. All right, finally, we're on the guardrails. I love these guardrails because they're rusted, which makes sense. Rails that don't receive regular wheel traffic are going to rust over and stay rusted over. Whereas main rails that the wheels travel on will be kind of rusty on the sides and not rusty up top. Yes, those are narrow gauge locomotives. I am building a narrow gauge route. That's going to be in sections. Not sure if I really want to feature too much of that just yet. Definitely don't have the time to make a build series out of it, but over the Thanksgiving break here, I did spend a little bit of time working on that narrow gauge route. I'll eventually at least give a post or something about its existence, but stay tuned for that. If you love narrow gauge, I have a narrow gauge project coming up. So I'll talk more in detail about that later if I ever decide to go public with it. So here I was being a doofus for a minute, and I was laying out trees because I wanted to get some variation. And then I realized, you know what? I've already got areas with variation. I can just copy and paste. And I felt really dumb, but you know what? It happens. So I just kind of go over the areas where I had just placed trees, and then I go back and kind of move stuff around, thin them out, get them off the tracks and stuff. But here's the thing. Some people may not like this, and this is okay. A lot of modelers, when they model their trains, they like to have stuff everywhere, activity, scenes, and that's great, actually, in my opinion. I love that because I like operations. For me, I don't have to have a really long mainline run to feel like I'm having a good time with operations. I just need to be able to go around a corner to a new spot, and we're good. Like, I don't really care because I like to do switching. That's my thing. But obviously, operations appeals to many people for many different reasons. The issue here, if you haven't noticed already, is there are just a ton of trees. Well, in this part of East Texas, there's not a lot of people, and so there's just a ton of trees. So to strike a balance, it is still going to be a bit one-sided in the trees' favor. I'm going to have a lot of trees in there, but then on occasion, at least between the tracks and the edge of the table, I'm going to have some areas where I kind of cut some trees out and put some little grassy areas in. And that's mostly just to make it so you can actually see your train from the aisle instead of staring at a bunch of trees. It's not really because this part of the CPKC main line to Shreveport necessarily has any cattle fields next to it. I mean, from time to time, on occasion, it does, but not with the frequency you're going to see here. But, I do need a power line, so I'm going to throw in a high voltage power line there. That gives me an excuse to create a little view area. So, but yeah, things like this here. But one thing that happened that we didn't talk about was we actually built out the dirt area for one of the bulk terminals. In the modern railroading scene, a lot of bulk areas or bulk transload areas in rural parts of the country are just subsiding with dirt around it. And they put some covered hoppers over there. They have trucks come by, and they have, pneumatic methods for getting the product out of the railroad cars and into the rigs. And they do it. And I've seen it. I've seen it in real life. I've seen it in action. I've seen it on Google Maps. They're everywhere. All right. So here I noticed on the track going to Shreveport, there were some areas that were built just for that. So we modeled those because those are easy to model. They also allow us to diversify our traffic a bit. Those are currently the only places that receive the really long 60-foot modern, LPG tankers, for example. So for things like propane and LPG, of all things. Never would have guessed it by its name. Yeah, so it gives us an opportunity to traffic some of those cars as well, so which is good. All right, and here we are still, as I mentioned, just adding in some details here, some shrubbery to kind of get a little bit of a view block. I had a little more trouble with this right here than I wanted, but obviously it put everything behind the backdrop. And so I was busy trying to move all these trees back in front of the backdrop. So the backdrop's not terrible, but I don't like to see just backdrop. I like to have stuff in front of it so that it really serves its purpose. And it's not the scenery, but rather just the back of the scenery. Here's a few more grassy areas just to kind of extend the view a bit. I might throw a fence in there later and some cows or something. We'll see, maybe some hay bales. Not sure yet. And then here is another facility, but this one is specifically for propane as opposed to bulk terminal for like dry bulk or plastics or things like that. This one's specifically for propane and LPG. So I'm going to actually put in an unloading rack here. It took me a minute to find it. Kind of forgot what it was called. In the process of trying to find it, I realized that there were some other industries I needed. So as I went through and grabbed these other things, I moved them over and got sidetracked. But you know what? It's okay, because I learned, with myself at least, that I'll waste a lot less time looking for something if the moment I find something I know I can use somewhere else, if I just go ahead and place it. For me, that works a lot better than staying hyper-focused on one thing at a time. Usually I do a pretty good job of remembering what I'm looking for, even well into the future. It's just the process of finding it naturally takes time. I use pick lists to a degree, yes, and then sometimes I don't. Just kind of depends. So I don't have a pick list with a bunch of the JR stuff on it. So that's just kind of what it is. But in the process of looking for that, which I finally found, there it is. Awesome. Happy to see it. I built, obviously, placed because I didn't build it, placed the location there for the trucks to be loaded. And then I'm going to go look for the next building I need for the paper mill over here. So they make some, actually they don't make paper, they make lumber here. Sorry, they make lumber. I'm pretty sure it's lumber. It's West Fraser. I'll have to double check. It might actually be paper on second thought. It might. I think I modeled it as paper, which is fine. But we've got a spot for, of course, loading up wood chips and loading up boxcars, which makes me think that since we're loading up wood chips, it's definitely not a paper mill. Yeah, okay. So I'll go back and look at what I wrote down originally. It's definitely not a paper mill, but we'll definitely still be shipping out product in either, center beams or boxcars, depending on what the product actually is. And then, of course, this will be the one spot on the entire route where we can receive wood chip cars. I love wood chip cars. The big, tall gondolas for wood chips are one of my favorites. So don't know why, just is. I like it. There, we just do a few modifications to the UP track that we're not ever going to interact with. And then here, since this is all kind of one big industry, I'm just kind of laying out the ground for that so we can get everything set up. And then I like to raise the ground instead of the track to show or kind of create the image where the track appears sunk. Especially when it's a model railroad, I definitely prefer to do that with the actual ground itself and not the track. Only because it's kind of a hassle sometimes when you're close to a switch to change the gradient of a track. I don't really like doing it unless I have to. One of my other routes that I was building that I lost in the hard drive failure, which I'll eventually resurrect, all the sidings were a little bit lower in height than the main line. And so, just the process of dropping it down, just that meter or so, or half a meter, was a bit of a hassle. I try not to do that unless I really have to. But there's not too much more we're going to do after this. We are going to get a little bit of the details done around that plant there. I wanted to say paper mill, but as we discussed, it's not. And then here's one last bulk terminal. I know you're thinking, man, 2 bulk terminals, an LPG facility, and some sort of lumbering-ish business. That's not a lot of traffic. And you know what? You'd be right, because this part of East Texas does not receive a lot of rail traffic. Jefferson and Marshall are about the only 2 towns of any size out there south of Texarkana, and they're on completely different rail lines with different industries. So it is what it is. In fact, the UP line crossing in Jefferson is the one that goes to Texarkana and to Marshall, depending on which way you're going. But that's it for this one. Thanks for joining in. We'll have some more build videos with more details coming up soon, so stay tuned for that. Thanks as always for watching, and I will catch you guys on the next one. We'll see you.